the most heartwarming experience was being at Bloodstock this year, which is a festival I've been going to for 10 years. I used to stand on the barrier, and just that extra meter and a half of me being stood on the other side of that barrier, as I walked into the pit for the first time, I kind of just looked at the floor and went, wow.
That's sacred ground. Have you had moments when there's been some amazing like star jump or something, and you're like, your camera was down at the moment because you were checking some setting, and you just go, fuck! Like,
all the time. One of the worst ones ever. And I just got in a good spot. The bassist was right up at the front. The song ends just as I'm like up here. She walks around and I go, no, come back. And then just you saw the floor open up and I just like crawled in. I was like, oh, well, I'm done.
What would you say is the difference between a good concert photographer and a great one?
I think a lot of it is
the realities of what it means to be a concert photographer are not that well known. I've done a little bit here and there over the years for the odd review, but there are people who truly dedicate themselves to the art form of it and the technical challenge of doing it at a high level. So what's it actually like? How do you get started in it? What are the challenges that people may not be aware of in the world of concert photography? Well, these are some of the questions that I'll be asking my guest today, who is Nic Howells. Welcome. Now, we met up at Radar Festival earlier this year, and there were some lovely photographers there, but you were the first one to kind of smile and nod at me, despite the fact that I did not have my pro DSLR camera there, and I was there with my little iPhone, and it was a wonderful, welcoming thing. So I'm excited to have the chance now to pick your brain a bit more on your world of proper concert photography, not the stuff that I've been doing thus far. So
no,
to begin with,
phone pics are valid. Let's get that. Like rule number one, phone pics are valid. Great.
It's very comforting and reassuring for others that might be in a similar situation. Lovely to know. So I suppose, how do you see, this is a broad, open question, for anyone who doesn't know what concert photography is, why does it exist? What is it for in its essence?
I really want to be the arse and say, well, really, going back to your initial phrasing, it makes us all freer. But it's weird because I kind of like fell backwards into it, where a lot of the time I was just going to gigs as a punter and would, for the most part, just get the photo for me. And just like, if you go like to like the dark ages of my Instagram, it's like a scrapbook where like they're not very polished, but like you can see I'm going for like the moment. So like in a funny sense, I guess it's just, what do you want people to remember from that show if they were there? What do you care? Because one of the worst ones is like the ones where you care about the artist, because then you have to try and catch that moment where it's like, this is why I care about it. Like, what is just one movement from person? What's that saying? In terms of just what it do, I think it's just another way of enjoying it, really. Because a lot of the time, for those unfamiliar, when you get your little sticky badge pass thing, you get 3 songs in the photo pit, which is in front of the barrier, and then you're out. But in those 3 songs, I feel like I've experienced like the full night. You kind of put so much value into, okay, so what order are those 3? And then it's kind of like that's everything you need. And a lot of time you'll find when people are reviewing the full show as well, you kind of sat there after, it's like, oh God, there's another 10 songs. That's an eternity. It's kind of immortalizing to be like very hyperbolic about it all.
I love that.
And everyone has a different take on how to do it. Like that's where style and taste comes into it. And sometimes it's just not that deep, to be honest. Sometimes it's just a photo of a dude like, and then that's kind of all she wrote.
Right. Yes. There's a few things I'd love to unpack further there. One is the fact that these are live gigs, which are energetic and moving at all times. And there's audio and there's, visual change to it, but you're attempting to capture that in a still image. To capture the sensation of that gig in a frame is quite a challenge and a difficult thing. And I guess to what you're saying, you're trying to capture your representation of what it felt like to be there. Is that, like, hearing that right, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of mine, I've been, for 99% of what I've shot, I've been kind of selective in terms of I have to have some kind of investment. And there's certain bands where live you are like, that's not quite for me. And it's right. Well, what are they doing that made you feel something? There's a way to still spin it. Where even if it's a band you're not really vibing with, what is it you don't like? Is it that the front man is really brash and cocky and, he's giving it a lot of that? Then you try and kind of catch him in a pose where it shows him off in that, like, very up himself kind of way. One of the examples that I think of is Fozzy, which is probably one of the more mainstream examples people might know.
I've seen them. Yeah, I'm aware of them.
Chris
Jericho's band.
Yeah, wrestler, like a lot of bravado, and he's like pulling this like big wide arm flexing pose, and I caught that. I was like, yeah, that kind of sums him up. Like, he's machismo, but also he's got like this bright gold leather jacket on.
It's kind of camp as well.
Like, there's a lot going on, and I think it's trying to either catch everything that's going on or saying a lot about a little. Yeah, I think it's conveying what is or isn't there. There's some shots I've really liked where it's just like the shot of like a forearm, but in enough like really precise detail and lighting that I tell you who that is, and you can imagine them in that setting of like holding the mic stand and like the intensity.
Yeah, because there's some of the most amazing photographs of gigs and things are ones I would never think to have shot. It's not a photo of the whole stage with the band on it, or just the one individual per se. It's it's an angle, or it's something about like there's a shoe on a monitor, and that's the thing that's in the foreground. And you see it's things like that that kind of capture a bit of the personality of the individual and the rest. But I'd never think to do any of that, or most bands as well in the audience, right? If they're not in the photo pit, won't be able to get those kind of angles. How do you figure out what are interesting angles that really bring a person to life or a moment to life? Is it pure experimentation, or are you also looking at other photographers and seeing what they're doing?
And most photographers that turn around and say they absolutely intended for something to happen are kind of just full of it, because you don't know what kind of day that performer's going to have. You don't know whether they're in the mood to do a jump kick. You don't know if they want to go over to the right side of the stage because maybe someone threw like a beer over there or something. Like, there's a lot of things that can go into it. So you can't, like, one of the things is everyone goes, oh, they do this in the third song. I'm like, that's great. But if you're not in the right spot to catch that, then there's no point.
Have you had moments when there's been some amazing like star jump or something, and you're like, your camera was down at the moment because you were checking some setting, and you just go, fuck! Like,
all the time. Every single, if there's not one show go by where I just kind of go, and because one of the things with me as well is I talk to myself while I'm in the pit. Okay. And a lot of the time you'll see me like with the camera up, and I'm like behind here, I'm talking. And one of the worst ones ever, a band called Hot Wax supported Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes. And I just got in a good spot. Everyone else had buggered off to that side. The bassist was right up at the front, just doing all the stuff, like leaning backwards, guitar out. Song ends just as I'm like up here. She walks around. I go, no, come back. And then just you saw the floor open up, and I just like crawled in. I was like, oh, well, I'm done.
Did they hear you say that?
I don't think they did, but at the time I was like, oh, good Lord.
Comfort yourself. They probably had in-ears and they were listening to something.
Which I did, and I heard me, but...
Yeah, because it's loud as fuck at the front of the crowd where the photo pit is. You're right with the speakers, and there's no audience in front of you to take some of that sound hit. Who was it? I think it was Vower at Radar Festival.
They were loud.
I didn't think I was going to... I thought after a song and a half, like, I might have to bail. And I have earplugs.
Yeah, the Loop, sponsor me. Loop is a very, very good brand. The thing is, in-ears for like 4 hours a night when you're doing like 4 or 5 nights a week, after a while you are like, this is just uncomfortable now. So I'm going to look at getting like a big set of cans to like just sit over the top, which means I'm just going to have like permanent headset hair. But I mean, it's going to be a lot more comfortable.
It'll be a unique fashion statement to be fun. You'll become known for it.
Yeah. They are getting more popular. But yeah, there's sometimes where like ear protection when you're right up at the front as well isn't enough. Bear Cave down in Bournemouth is literally just a basement with speakers. And I went and saw Wargasm and Lake Malice down there, and even with the in-ears in, like I got like this little like TV staticky like or like screech, and I was like, oh, that's loud.
Yeah. The perils of it. That's tricky.
But yeah,
Now,
I mean, primarily it's down to chance, it's down to placement, and yeah, it's down to framing. Because say you've got like a really close lens, so that like you're here, and someone like comes up to the camera and like points at it, it's probably going to focus on this guy, and like you're going to
yeah.
lose his face, or like focus can change. It's one of the reasons I'm big on shooting manual focus when you're just starting out, because you learn so much in terms of how you can get like the perspective of what it sees here, and then what it can do for the shot back here.
Now,
It's really
manual
interesting.
focus, I understand, is the way to go because you have that level of control and predictability on it. You know what you're focusing on.
Mm.
But I imagine, certainly I feel this, in the early beginnery stages, it feels like the scariest thing to do. It's like, but what
Oh
if
yeah.
I fuck it up and actually I don't realize it because I can't really tell on my screen, and I get home that night and look at all my photos and they're all out of focus.
Hi, it's me. I did that so much.
Really? So,
So much. This is the thing, is the number of times a photographer is going to sit there and think, I got the shot. You get home and you go, but can we swear?
yeah. I've
Fuck.
sworn maybe 10 times.
I've got like a filter where like something goes on and I'm like, right, no swearing.
Okay.
The number of times that I got home thinking that shot's going to look great. Lighting's just a bit wrong. Focus is just a bit wrong. Like he's got just like the wrong mouth shape. Like that's a big thing for me. I don't know. Like when you see someone like singing and instead of like it's like a,
Yeah.
and like it takes so much of the immersion out of what that person's doing, because it's like they're going versus like a proper in your face rock star moment. It's really interesting.
When you discover that your photos are out of focus for that one kick, how do you learn to prevent that next time? Or what would you do as a counter measurement to it? And not just go autofocus.
This is one of the things where autofocus is usually your friend. I think manual focus is for when you're going for a very specific look. Say, okay. I don't know. Again, with like the mic stand thing, mic stands are often the star of the show just because it's all your camera wants to focus on, which is a nightmare. Yeah. But yeah, I think autofocus is your friend. And a lot of the time, and this is one of the very few times I'll say it, is that it can depend on what gear you've got. I often tell people, just shoot, just start. 9 times out of 10, the camera that you have on your phone is going to be better than certain cameras that are out there nowadays. So just start taking photos. One thing I found was that in my original setup of gear, I hit a certain point where it was so dark or whatever, and it was just failing me. It wasn't picking up enough light. And I was then like, oh, I might need to upgrade. And I started having that problem a lot less. So sometimes, yeah, the quality of what you're working with can depend. Maybe your settings are wrong, because also one thing I've learned a big lesson on is shutter speed, where you can lose a shot entirely. Like one of the big ones that everyone always wants is like a headbang shot.
Right.
And shutter speed can just ruin the hair if it's too low.
So to explain shutter speed, that is, for the layman,
just kind of how fast it's grabbing everything, which obviously if it's doing that faster, there's less chance for light to get into the camera.
So the longer the shutter speed would be, the more chance of like a blurry image of someone's moving?
Yes. So the lower the shutter speed is, you get more light because obviously it's taking more time to go like this. But in that same time, you aren't catching it in one place. You're catching it here and here as it shuts.
So if you're looking for a headbang moment, you're not looking... I'm just assuming you're for like a freeze frame of that person mid-head, but you're looking for a slight motion blur with it, or what's the preference?
Well, that's the thing, is it's completely subjective. It depends how you want it to look. Personally, with hair, I like when it's kind of crisp and you can see where we're at. One of the best ones to start on that is dreads, because obviously dreads are just one solid piece, and therefore they're a lot easier to catch in focus. Whereas I've known some people have like really fine, like really cool hair, and when they're headbanging with that, it's just like just a blur. But yeah, so shutter speed is the big one that I've learned a lesson on personally, because in terms of not doing it for the longest time, it was one of the things I was like, it's kind of how bright this is and how quick it does things. And you learn how often you can trade settings off against one another to get that balance. Right.
So a lot of this stuff is obscured away from us or abstracted away from us in the world of iPhones and the rest. But if you're upgrading your gear to like a proper pro sort of camera, it seems like there's several main factors you have to trade off as you're saying against each other. Like there's the shutter speed, but then it depends on what the photos look like. It impacts the amount of light that can come in. But then you can have like there's ISO levels, which can change how much it tries to compensate, as I understand it, for low light. But that can add graininess, which you don't necessarily want. Maybe sometimes for artistic reasons you might. And then there's f-stop, which is
that's your aperture, which is that's based on the lens you're using.
Right.
So you shutter
that's
speed
also size of light that can come in.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's weird to explain. Basically, it's how much there is in the lens that can kind of get light in there.
Oh yes, I think I'm getting it because it's almost like a shutter in a way. It's sort of it will close off the size of the
So
the lens picks
one
it up.
of the funniest ways to explain it is that all this stuff is in your webcams. It's in your phone. It's just not called that. And I think it's one of the things where photography is kind of a bit of a gate-kept industry that I didn't know what f-stop was when I got a camera. I was like, oh, what does this setting do? It just has to be low for the most part. This one has to be high. And they're not, none of them are the same. Obviously, certain cameras can do more ISO than others. Certain lenses can do lower f-stop than others. And you can get the same result, but in differing quality. It's a real learning curve. And personally, it's one that I haven't even mastered yet and will never try and use the word mastery again because I already hated the fact that came out of my mouth.
I've mastered other things, but not that,
It's complete swings and roundabouts, to be fair, because I remember having all the gear that I've got now and shooting Bob Villain. Really dark first song, red lighting from below, just shook the entire setup there. But yeah, really dark red lighting from below. And as he's doing this, like he starts with like yoga and he's like rocking. I just need to stop knocking that table, don't I?
You're fine.
He's doing all this and you like can't catch his face at all. Like you can see there's a face there, but it's just not focusing whatsoever. And it was because of the type of settings I had going where the shutter speed wasn't high enough to kind of catch him while he was moving, but then also the lens that I was using at the time wasn't equipped for that low light. There's
for
a lot
most
of things
gigs, would you
it.
just not know, I guess, I'm assuming, what kind of lighting they're going to have? It might depend on the venue or their choices. So are you going in a little bit blind and then using maybe the first song to figure out what might work? But then I suppose maybe they change the lighting in the second song. And
depends on the artist, because a lot of people, like the more veteran togs, will tend to kind of do their research. Like they'll look at other shows on the tour. Oh, on this song they played with this lighting. Oh, on this. And then occasionally you will get ones that don't have a lighting tech and they have a different lighting arrangement every night. So it can go either way. I've known bands play the same venue that we were at Radar, which that's pretty big venue. I think it's like 5K cap. And one of the bands just didn't have a lighting tech. So what they had in Leeds was like really dark green lighting for one song. And then when the song came up for us to shoot, it was like blue. And I'm like, oh, this is not what I planned for. So it's kind of like expect the unexpected. Just control what you can control, which is your settings, which is your placement, which is your framing. And yeah, just have fun with it. Like a lot of the time, my favorite shoots, I might not have always got the exact photo, but I've had fun. And like, I've had the enjoyment of being at a concert, because at the end of the day, you might be like working, but you're still at a concert. It's still a fucking awesome place to be because it's live music and it's like really cool.
Yeah, I'd say in pretty much every moment during the day I spent at Radar Festival, I took at least maybe only as little as 20 seconds in the pit during the 3 songs to not take photos or videos and just go like, this band's playing 2 feet from me. It's fucking cool.
Oh yeah, no greater situation that does it. Yeah, like I don't like being like, oh, well, I shot this guy, but when I photographed Corey Taylor and I'm stood underneath him, and I just kind of look and I go, that's Corey fucking Taylor.
Yeah.
And
reach out and touch his shin.
Yeah, it set in and I was just like, he's just like there. Like, he's just a person. And yeah, that it kind of goes back into the whole you never know what to expect depending on the performer as well, because they're just a person at the end of the day. Like
Mm.
they can have a fucking bad day. They can have an off night. They could have anything go wrong during the set. And it's one of the things that I really started to like respect when I got into concert photography, especially when you find out about the number of times that someone can take a bad photo of someone and still publish it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like if I like point my nose up to the sky and you can see like up both nostrils, I'm not going to want you to take a photo of that and publish it. But some people still do.
Yeah, I was also more aware of that side of things when I was in the photo pit, because as a musician, generally, when you're going to go on the stage, you're thinking about the stage and thinking about the crowd. You're
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily expecting, because you don't always see it as well when you're doing sound checks and the rest, that suddenly, right as you're about to come on, a horde of photographers might come in and just be
Oh
like in
yeah,
your face with lenses. And you might suddenly be like, oh, I'm not really playing to the crowd. I'm having to play now for these shots that I want to look good, but I'm not ready for this. So kind of sensitive to that. Like, how do you adapt around them, or give them the space, but also try and get the shots? Or is it just an understanding that, listen, we all know we're here for 3 songs and then we'll fuck off, you know?
yeah. I think usually with the crowd, I try as much as possible to always point out I'm only going to be there for the 3. Um, except when it's Lana Del Rey, because Lana Del Rey fans are evil.
Okay.
We
We'll
were
explore
at
that
Leeds
in a
Fest
moment.
this weekend,
Oh, right.
and we like had to work our way into the crowd, and I was the back of the queue of the people that were making their way through. And as I'm going past, people are nipping the skin on the back of my arm because they're like, "How dare you get past us? We want to see the show." And I'm like, "I understand. It's a very special concert for everyone. I'm going to be here for 3 songs. I'm going to go away." That was a bit chaotic. But to your point about the performer and what they do, I generally just assume they're either going to be in their space, because obviously the stage is their space. You have to respect the fact that only they are supposed to be up there, and they're up there for a reason. They have a job to do. Or that they're probably going to play to the crowd more than us, because a lot of people wish that they played to the press, but then you're taking a moment away from a fan who's probably caring about this gig a lot more than you taking a photo. So I like when people play up to the press. I don't expect it. 9 times out of 10, I don't expect it.
Right. So it'll be one of those cases where you're ready for that if that happens, but the assumption is they should be, in theory, playing to the crowd. And
I mean, God, one of the absolute gods of the industry when it comes to being a performer is Benji Webb from Skindred.
Oh, yeah. Legend.
And he's like the 3rd performer I ever shot when he toured with his other band Dub War. And then I shot him with Skindred in April. And I got this one where like he crouches down just enough. And it's where obviously the second someone gets up to the front of that stage, press, we all do it. Like we're going to
crowd in.
Huddle, yeah, like real
it's
bad.
My shot.
And the thing is, I can't blame him, because you've got to get the shot at you've got to get a shot that you can work with, hopefully. But I got him in this one. It's on my Instagram. I'll like find it at some point. And he's like just popping one of these like right into the lens, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. And I don't know if he's looking at me or not, but that's a good shot. But then there's a lot of time where you can take that wider angle, and like people will come up to the front of the stage and like look out, because at the end of the day, they've sold a venue out. Like they're playing to people who, the entire idea that someone can give money to see a person, like if someone like gives you £10 in the street, it's like, hey, like I want to see you. Like
yes,
the system that it works on is really like, it must be so cool for them. And you want to catch the fact that not only are they a really cool person in various instances, but that like they have got to be so grateful to be there. Like again, like the performer is just a person as well. They're probably having a lot of emotions in terms of bearing their soul and playing music for all these random people in a room, and it must be terrifying as well. So
yeah. Well, it's great that you have that, that perspective in mind, or do it, because I felt it when I was there, because I never really considered it. Because when you go in and go, I've got a task to do here, and take some photos and videos, and because I need this for the content I'm making. But you because I think in part you're so close to the human being that's on stage, you kind of go, this is like an unspoken conversation we're having here. This is odd. It's kind of
big time, big time. Like it always sucks when you're that close to them and they do look past you, because you're like, oh, it's clear that you're like in some other kind of moment. It is what it is. Like I say, they've got a job to do. And like when like you were at the second stage at Radar, that is like what you're going to do, like crane your neck down to look at all these press, or look at that big like 100-meter space where people have packed into this like really tiny corridor of a room to see you. Because at the end of the day, those people don't have to be there. They don't have to come see your set. So I respect people a lot more for like looking back there and being in that moment. And like, yeah, if someone happens to look at us, the Seething Akira guy on the Saturday, just like pop me one of them, and I was like, oh, thanks, bud.
In a jaunty way, or in
he was trying to be like a bit sassy about it, and
Okay.
he's got like the tongue out a little bit. He's like
right? Okay.
as though it's like, oh, look what I'm doing, and I'm like, oh, that's actually an all right shot. But it had to, because I've got this running joke that like bands just flip me off. Because I've got so many photos of band members just throwing it up at me, and I'm like, sick, thanks.
Like, I'm sure it's not me. It's just what they do.
No, the children are wrong. Yeah, it's like if they choose to interact with you, you're just as privileged as the fans that are getting that moment with them. So at least make it count is kind of how I view it.
Sure.
Yeah, if you can get it on film, all the better.
Because if you're trying to capture what it feels like to be at that show as a member of the audience, if you do get a shot of them looking in your lens, that kind of translates to what it would feel like if you were in the front row as an audience member for the rest of the set, if they look directly at you. So I think in a way you kind of do capture that vicariously, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a lot more so when you're shooting for a band or for a venue is, right, what are we doing here? Like, what's the sale, if it will? What is our bit that makes you want to come see us? And if you can catch it so that you're in a really intense moment, the vocalist for a band that I shoot for called Neon Oracle, we got this really cool one where she's got a hat on, so you can't see the eye line properly. And it's like this really like come to me type thing. And like they're a really cool band to shoot because it's very performative in terms of just like the poses and the visuals, but they're also like raging. And they are like number one by a very large margin in terms of the band that has flipped me off the most.
Okay.
Because they've just made a thing of it now.
Is this, I had a scan through your photos on your Instagram. Is this the one? Because there's some band where they seem to do a lot of like almost bending over backwards crab walking like style. Is that them or is that someone else?
Crab walking.
But like very flexible poses on stage. I don't know who they were.
I mean, there's a few just because some people are like bringing it now.
If you
top of my head, in terms of flexible, I know that like Against the Current and Dead Pony are two bands that do like the crab pose deal. I mean, it's kind of just a popular thing in terms of when people are going for like a high note or an intense part of the song is to like arch their back out, like free up all this space so that they can like put their lungs into it. Right. And I think then by like performance's sake, some people just go full whack with it. I'm not the best at catching that pose. I've got like a meh as hell track record with it. Okay. I did get Against the Current doing it when they played Gorilla, which I believe is on one of my posts. My internet has gone to crap on my phone, but it's in here somewhere.
No worries. I'll have a flick on Instagram to see if I can find what I was talking about there. But how did you get into this to begin with? When you mentioned at the start there that you were just taking photos of gigs for your own kind of record of what you experienced. When did you transition into, I'm going to do this, and this is the thing I'm going to do at this next gig? How did you make that happen? What was that first gig experience like?
Well, huge W in that regard is having a partner who's already a photographer. So my partner, Christina, already did like fashion and e-com type shoots and then had dabbled a bit in music. And they just kind of like pointed out the obvious of, you could just, because I got to a point in terms of when I was just taking them on my phone where I was so determined to get this, like the photo, because it mattered to me. Because I was like, I want to remember that. Because there's sometimes you scroll back and you're like, oh, holy shit, that was an awesome show. I remember when they did this. And I was just doing that all on my phone. And like, you can just get a camera and just take photos. Like, go to small venue shows, like venues that I was going to anyway, and shoot Dub War, for example. I had a ticket to see Dub War, and then just brought a camera along and like snapped a few pics, and then was like, sick, this is awesome, bye. yeah, I just kind of, someone showed me I could do it. And yeah, same as I said a bit ago, the best thing you can possibly do with a phone, with a little point and shoot, or with a DSLR, with a mirrorless, any of it, is just start. There's always chances to find a venue that you can get into with a camera. Generally speaking, it's like your pubs, certain clubs, and then it's about building a portfolio. And so, yeah, again, a lot of it is luck. In terms of accreditation, it can completely depend on who it is, and we work with some amazing PRs in terms of them allowing us. I mean, you've seen it. You did Radar. Like, in terms of the communication with the PR, they want you to enjoy yourself just as much. So they're really cool people that work in the industry, but also, like, it's blind luck as to if they're going to let you in sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, even when I went to get my accreditation, I was like, they might just say, no, you're not on the list. And you're like, well,
I've had that. Shout out Prescription PR, because they did sort us out in the end. I didn't know that I was down to shoot Rise Against last week.
Nice.
And it was 7:30. I am in Sheffield as we speak. And fellow photographer, who, shout out to them, rang me and was like, you're on the list. I know they've not told you, but you're on the list. And I'm like, well, it's in Manchester. Rise Against around 9:00. I ran out of the house with no shoes on, like jumped in the car in my pajamas, drove straight to Manchester, and got there for 5 to 9.
Still in your pajamas?
Shot Rise Against in my pajamas.
Actual?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dude, that's fucking amazing.
There's a photo, like, I had a Hatebreed hoodie and some Exorcist slip-on Vans in the car. And I'm stood in the pit in, like, pink shorts, a purple Twitch t-shirt, this Hatebreed hoodie, and Vans. And I'm like, I am so sweaty. But yeah, like, PRs, they will always try and be helpful. Like, credit to them. And the worst they can do is say no. Like, it doesn't benefit anyone for people in that industry to be mean, to be unhelpful. So the worst that some companies can do, some bands can do, is say no. And you've asked.
So who do you take photos for? You got your own portfolio on Instagram. Do you have certain publications that you work with in particular, or is it PR companies to do shots and send to bands that they could potentially use?
6 of 1. Like, it can vary. So obviously I shoot for certain bands. Shout out Neon Oracle. Me, my partner, and their work colleague, my friend, have our own publication, which is Gigraphy. We just did Leeds Fest. I shout out Exposure magazine for being the first one to really get me a press pass. It was Skillet by accident. We don't talk about it.
Okay.
I just showed up and was like, oh yeah, I'm here for a press pass. And they're like, yeah, we've got you down as a reviewer. I was like, no.
And they went, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me give you a...
That was what happened. And I was like...
so rare. Normally they're just like,
yeah, but
no.
the thing is, like, the door staff at said venue, which I will not be pointing out the location of just for their sake, they were just really chill about it. I was like, oh, I was under the impression I was meant to be photographing the show. And they were like, oh, so sorry, that might be an issue on our end. Bang. And I was just like,
that's tremendous.
Okay. But yeah, Gigraphy UK, Exposure magazine, management. I'm management on Out of Rage Network. I do photography for Scene Music Media. Who else? Metal Junkbox.
So loads.
Yeah, like, honestly, if you can find a publication that is taking on, photographers are often the harder one to get approved as, just because it's a very popular medium. But if you can get a publication, you're halfway there, because publications will oftentimes handle the requests for you. You just need to build up that reliability in that portfolio.
And I assume as well they might also outrank at times. So there's been the odd moment if I'm a small YouTube...
I'm not going to get in tomorrow over Kerrang, for example, but like, it's just how you play the game, to be honest. I mean, if you have a good relationship with a PR, then obviously you can hit them up maybe closer to the time than some might and say, oh, hi, just wondering if there's any availability. Thanks a lot. Glad we could be in touch. There's certain PRs that I think are just like really cool people because I've heard from them that many times. And I'm like, you know what? We've probably never sat down and had a drink, but like, you're bloody good at your job. So that's what counts.
That's excellent. Yeah, it sounds like a combination
in terms of getting a publication. That's step one.
Right. And you were saying before, well, shoot. get some experience, get some photos together for a portfolio. Then I suppose you could approach a publication and say, here are some examples I've done. Do you need photos in
Yeah.
the future?
So, I mean, if you have the opportunity in your area to go to venues unaccredited and take photos, always just talk to the bands as well, because they will more often than not be very happy to get photos. Most bands will take the chance. Oh, hey, I took some photos of you. Here they are. Value your work. Make sure that you're marketing yourself appropriately, because at the end of the day, you are providing a service, whether you think your work is good or not. Like, you can take one photo that someone could like cherish for the rest of time, and it's just it's really fucking cool, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah,
I get
fair.
like really tired with photography sometimes, like because it's such a late night medium.
Right.
And then occasionally like, you have a chat like this, you're like, holy shit, this industry is fucking cool. It's just cool.
Yeah, and to your point about approaching bands, because bands, when they're on tour, they will have, usually, depending on the size of the venue, etc., but they'll usually have some guest slots available. And if they're on tour, the chances are they don't know anyone in the city that they're in, unless they're in like London, and then they might have a bunch of press people they need to give.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, tour supports are in the same boat as the headlining band, or if it's a show that is doing a local support as well, like that might be the one show they're going to be at, and you might be able to be the person to get photos of that.
Right.
Which is something I always think is just really cool. Like, because you could have a completely different lineup tomorrow, and you might be the only person that took those photos. Like,
And as I understand it, a great way in as well is if there, for example, you want to take photos of insert band name here, unrealistic, Sleep Token. You probably can't. You can't
still
get
my beating heart.
Yeah, you can't get photos of Sleep Token unless you happen to. You have to find some other way, right? If you happen to know the support band for Sleep Token, maybe they want photos of themselves. Maybe they add you to their list, and maybe you're lucky enough to get to shoot the entire evening. Then you can get photos of Sleep Token. Now, Sleep Token,
Not
extreme
as gospel,
example. That's
but
probably
yeah, I
not
mean, it's happened. I know in a tour in April, a lot of people went through the support band to the PR because it was an overseas band, overseas company for the PR. So they went through the British support, got approved for it, and it turns out they were allowed to shoot the entire show.
nice.
Always respect your venue staff in terms of if you have limits on your pass, though, because at the end of the day, they are just doing their job as well. Like, you can only go with what you've been awarded from the PR. So their word is kind of final in most instances. And it kind of helps in terms of if you have a good relationship with the PR.
Yeah. So initially, it's kind of building some relationships, making some connections, and then proving yourself to be reliable, not only in hopefully the quality of your work, but in showing up, being dependable, being respectful to the staff, etc. They'll be happy to have you back. You're more likely to get.
Oh yeah, there's some venue staff that I know now just because I've seen them enough times, and like even if it's just like we did at Radar, we just kind of shoot them like you just shoot one of them.
How you doing? You good?
Because even as simple as like they stand there all night, like sliding the barrier open so all the photographers can come in, and then they slide it back when they all leave. And it's like, oh, even that, like, thanks a lot, mate. I appreciate that because I've not had to go like this. And yeah, they're just doing their job. Like, some people don't love the music industry, but it's a means to an end.
Sure.
So like some security might not want to be there. Some really do enjoy it. And it's just kind of appreciating the fact that they're giving up their night as well.
I absolutely love your attitude to all of that, dude, because I think that is
because I was a fan for like 10, 15 years and like was the most heartwarming experience was being at Bloodstock this year, which is a festival I've been going to for 10 years.
Oh yeah.
And I used to stand on the barrier for 10 years. I'm really happy I get to tell this story on like another medium. But I used to stand on the barrier for all 3 days for 10 years, me and these two other guys. And just that extra meter and a half of me being stood on the other side of that barrier, like as I walked into the pit for the first time, I kind of just looked at the floor and went, wow.
That's sacred ground.
Oh, absolutely. Shout out to fucking, there's too many names. All the people that shoot Bloodstock, who all the names are going to flood back into my brain as soon as we're done with this, but they, for a long time, were like, God. Shout out Tim Finch, because without me knowing it, his photo of me rocking one of these to the camera was my cover photo on Facebook for like 5 years, and
Oh,
I
that's
did
cool.
not credit him for a day. I was like, oh no, credit your photographers, please. But yeah, like it helps that I'm a fan. It really does. And at times, people are like, oh, are you the official photographer? And I'll kind of like, no, I'm not official. I'm just a fan. Like, I'm a photographer who happens to be a fan. And it's just really cool. Would I hopefully one day get to shoot Sleep Token? God, I mean, if the offer's there. But yeah, there's so
Adam
many
Rossi's
good
got
bands.
that. Not Adam
and
Rossi,
it's just
is it?
another way to enjoy them.
Yeah.
What was that, sorry?
I was saying, I think, yeah, Adam Rossi's got that pretty locked down, I'd say.
And the dude is killing it as well. Like, in terms of their style, he just gets it, clearly. And he must work his ass off with, like, the fact that he's down here 1 second and then he's up behind the drum riser a second later.
Running around that place, clearly, every venue. He's getting every shot going. But he has the responsibility of representing a very specific band. And
dude's got it good, but dude's got to work.
Yeah.
And, like, drum risers are not an easy thing. And I say that as I've climbed on one drum riser, which was, in fact, just a wooden box behind the drum kit. And the noise that came out of me was just like... So, yeah, like, photographers put in a shift. But, yeah, if they're a fan, you know they are having just as good a time as the people on the front row.
That's great. I think you're being somewhat humble here, say that this is the love of the music and the rest, but also it is contagious to be kind as much as it is contagious to be difficult. And I have to imagine there are moments where you have other photographers who are perhaps a little bit more competitive in the pit about trying to get the shots that they want, irrespective of what anyone else is doing. Have you had difficult experiences with folks, and how do you deal with that if you do?
I've had like this bitch moment before. When I was shooting Frank Carter and one gentleman's lens was here, so much so that with my loops in and with the music playing, I can hear that.
Wow.
And I just kind of looked at him and was like, brother, who the fuck is taking this photo, you know?
Am I in the photo? Like, it sounds like I'm...
I am so sorry to people who shot Rise Against last week, because I noticed it in one or two photos, because I'm directly under Tim at one point when he climbed off the stage and onto the barrier.
Right.
And you can just see the top of my camera, and I know because I can see what settings I was using. And I'm like, I'm so sorry I took photos with those settings, and I'm so sorry I'm in your shot. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Like you say, sometimes you've got Benji Webb from Skindred, and he's right there, and so everyone is gonna want to get in on that. So, like, I understand it, but then there's sometimes it's like, just don't be a dick. Like, I love getting a chance to chat with photographers, and like you saw at Radar, occasionally you are just stood there, like, just having a bit of a jive, just a bit of energy, because it's like, yeah, like, it's a scary place. It can be really like nerve-wracking to be in there and being like, oh, I'm being trusted to take photos of this artist. And occasionally you just need to like break the ice and just like drop a jellyfish dance in there and like just have fun. God, it's great when you have a gig and you have fun. I have to admit, there's been times where I've left a gig, it's been stressful, everyone's been super serious about it. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I enjoyed that. And I did at the end of the day, because it's a real privilege getting to go to these shows, but I'm like, oh, it was a really tense atmosphere tonight, and sometimes I just like fucking around.
But that's so it takes a bit of courage to be the one to try and like open up to people and say like, hey, how are you? Because it is that kind of awkward, we're a bunch of strangers here, we're kind of just waiting for the chance to go in. But the moment that it does open up, which you did for us, I'd say, as a group, then between the bands, we're hanging out, we're chatting as the photographer crew, and it was a much more enjoyable experience than what was otherwise still a good one, because I fucking love music and checking out the live performances, but you're sort of going around, I've got those shots and the rest, I have enough, okay, back, and I'll enjoy the rest of the show, and I'm thinking about how am I going to review this thing, and then, okay, next band's on, over we go, waiting, like it was a kind of a ping pong, I got to wolf down some food right now, I'm going to miss some of this next band. It's quite a stressful
food
logistical
was like
thing.
The most stressful part of that day as well, just because everything else was so chill, like everyone was in a really good mood. I mean, generally, like I said earlier, like I usually just hit him with like the...
Yes, I got one of them.
Like, it's like an icebreaker, or it's like they either back or like they just nod at you. I'm like, okay, cool, got your vibe. And like sometimes, yeah, people don't want to talk. Maybe they've
Immediate
had a
vibe
shit day
check.
as well. Vibe check is it's one of the most important things, and I find that when a photographer's got personality, when they want to have a good time, generally you can see it in their work as well. There's like a million photographers I want to shout out for stuff like this. Tall Dan, Dan Mills, he was until recently the photographer for the Academy Music Group in Manchester, and dude's like 6'6".
Oh,
He's so tall.
so the
And
front
he said,
of the
I
crowd
just
is
need to get
not
a shirt
seeing
that says sorry on the back.
3 songs only, and I'm gone. Like it.
Yeah. But you can tell because he just has a good time. He just has a joke, and he's like, yeah, sure. And like I shot Biffy Clyro last weekend, and he just messaged me being like,
Oh
"Did you
my
just walk
God.
up the steps to Peace Hall?" And I was like, "Yes." Why do you know that? He's like, "Because I could see." I was like, "Yeah, that's because you can see over everyone else." But yeah, like I just love getting a chance to chat with people. Most of the time, it's like, yeah, you run the risk of looking like the idiot that won't show up. But I had a better night than some people some nights. So
100%. 100%. No, it was fantastic, man. But fuck it, you shot Biffy? That's amazing.
Yeah, good
Dude.
lord. So the magnitude of that really set in, like, as it was happening.
They're one of the best bands on the planet, in my opinion. They're absolutely incredible.
They are fucking up there. And also, like, so Download is like hallowed ground for me.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't get Download this year.
I don't know if I'd want to work Download. It's because I enjoy it as a holiday, as a pilgrimage. I don't want to work.
You know what? Kind of this year, I'm glad I didn't, because it would have been a stressful weekend, especially with the mud and everything in the gear.
So much.
But I was a bit like, I would have loved to have done that. And then the magnitude of seeing Biffy on stage, like, these guys have headlined that. That's huge. And so, like, when I left the PR that evening, I was like, thank you so much for this, because it's an amazing venue. If you've not been to Halifax Peace Hall, get a gig there, because it's an awesome atmosphere. Witch Fever were on support, which, if you've not listened to Witch Fever, they are one of my favorite UK bands, like, bar very few.
That's a big shout. I have heard them. I think my opinion was that they were all right, but maybe I'm missing some chorus.
I vibe with that kind of thing, like the really like
fair enough,
like stank facey like guitar. I love the guitar tone so much. It scratches something back there. I don't know what it is. And they're very in your face. And then them contrasted with like Biffy, where they're quite like jovial and like like they did Captain within the first 3, and I was like,
nice.
Oh, this is like a real tonal shift, but people are fucking loving both bands. So it was a sick lineup, sick venue. Like the PR were really cool. And yeah, I was just like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, how do we get onto this point?
I just said, yeah, Biffy was amazing. But how did we? Doesn't matter. One of the things that I absolutely adored, a moment from Radar Festival, I think it was during the midnight. So and there is a professional question coming. It's about the lighting, colors, and how you deal with that. Because some bands, like the lighting was just like one color the whole time. And I really enjoyed it. It was during the midnight, and every fucking light on the stage was green. And I was there trying to get some photos. At one point, you were stood next to me with your camera, and you just looked at me one point and said, green.
Yeah. Thing is, I saw that photo like today and was just like, so fucking green.
Wall to wall green. There was another band that we shot on the second stage, was Caskets. Fucking blue. Everything was blue. So when that happens, what could you do to compensate for the solid color of it all?
So solid color, sometimes you've just got to eat a shit sandwich, unless you are amazing at color correction, which I am not. I will admit my shortcomings in that field. Just lean into it. So you're getting like the exclusive here. There's a certain style I go with for festivals, which is like festival logo presents this band. And so with certain ones, I adjusted. I won't show up on that, will it? It's very bright. I took the Radar logo and just adjusted the color.
Okay.
To like match certain artists. So like I just went for like an all white version.
Yeah.
Like a
so you
red
could build
when the lighting was red.
some breaking contrast color wise in what you add afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, again, it completely depends on the venue because some can rock a blue and they've got like a little white extra light up there that will
Right.
bring the flesh tones back in,
Yeah.
which I fucking love.
Second stage, the radar did not have that.
For the most part, yeah, no, it didn't. Like, it just was what it was. It got better through the weekend. Like, it wasn't blue.
Yeah. Or red. So some of them were
Yeah,
solid red at some
very
point.
red because Throne, who were very
Throne.
good, but very red.
Yeah.
Just a quick second while we're
Sure.
talking about Throne. Your damn voice entered my brain while I was at Bloodstock.
Okay.
I bought like a nice waterproof zip up thing. It was Behemoth branded. And I zipped it all the way up because it was cold one night.
Uh-huh.
And then when you were talking about Throne always wearing the tracksuit tops, I was like, oh God, I'm the problem.
Yeah, but
It
you're
just
not
popped
on
into my head.
stage sheltered with a raincoat on. That
They
makes
must be
no
so
sense.
warm. Because if it's like proper Gore-Tex stuff, that
it would
shit,
just
like,
heat up.
gets toasty.
Yeah.
But I also love like the aesthetic of it's not you have to look a certain way to be on this stage to play this kind of music.
It's kind of a cool anonymity to it as well. Like, I'm not important. You can't really see who I'm just a coat and some trousers.
Like the level of anonymity of we have Sleep Token at home is just someone in like a full zip. But yeah, I mean, Radar was a testing one in terms of lighting. And the only band that had that level of block color on the Friday was probably the Midnight. They had a bit of white lighting as well, so I don't know if they were going for something. I'm not too well versed in them, but I really enjoyed them because like it went completely pitch black, and then bro just appears directly in front of you and me on the saxophone.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, that's epic. That's so cool, and I didn't know it was going to happen.
Yeah, it's sick.
Sometimes just live with it. Like work with the color grading that you have. So if you can bring the lighting up on one side of the face so that you can at least get shadow, so you can get definition.
Okay.
Work with it. Black and white is your friend in terms of if you need to save a shot. One of my favorite photos I took last year was of Lake Malice. And it was a completely blue photo. But Alice from Lake Malice was like down on her knees, like leant back in like this kind of, what's the word? Like anguish almost. And in that one, I was like, I can't save the color. I can't correct the skin tone because I'm just not very good at it. Instead of like running myself crazy with this, I just go like a really like kind of subtle black and white where there's still definition in it. And I quite like it. I don't often go for black and white, but I know that some people, that's like their chief most style, and it does really work. So lighting's there's like a few memes in a few different photography friend groups where I'm just the guy that complains about lighting. So I think it might even be in one of my email signatures for one of the publications I work for, where it's like former Twitch streamer Fever333 enthusiast complains about lighting.
Nice.
And I'm just like, oh, that's my legacy. Great.
Well, you've given a couple of practical tips there. Shout out quickly to Cater for asking that question in the Discord. Do you have to be a skilled editor of photos as well? Is that becoming something that's really important, or can you get enough of a talent in the shot itself that maybe you don't need as much of the editing? How much do you care about or invest time into the editing of the photos later on?
Editing can always be your friend in terms of trying to save a shot. I've taken shots before. I'm like, I'm probably not going to use that. And then other ones haven't turned out like I thought they would. They've not edited down like I thought they would.
Like, I need to use that.
Yeah. Editing has saved that one. And it's been like one of my featured shots. I'm like, sweet, I guess. Like that turned out all right. Back to like the hair thing as well. If you can like add texture and stuff. There's one for a band I shot called Cattle Decapitation.
Oh yeah,
which is like the loveliest name.
One of the greatest.
But they like he did this thing where like he had the mic, he'd just finished, and like this hand's like creeping forward. His hair's all in his face, and there's this one like lone strand like swinging towards the camera, and like just the bit of extra definition. It takes it from like a completely flat photo to like this is a 3D moment, and like he's coming towards you. And a bit like Grudge-y and like The Ring, where it's like coming out of the screen. I'm like, oh, that's fucking cool.
Milana in the Discord as well was asking, do you have a best holy shit, I can't believe I've captured that moment thus far?
I mean, kind of just any of them, to be fair, because it is crazy that like you just get to do these. I mean, like the list of bands that I haven't shot is getting shorter, or list of bands that I have bucket listed shooting is getting shorter.
That's wild.
Just on preference. Like, I love when a band can prove me wrong, and I'm like, holy shit, they were awesome. But I started off on some of my personal favorites. Like one of the first bands I shot with when I upgraded my camera was Graphic Nature.
Oh yeah,
I friggin' love Graphic Nature. But at that show, I discovered a band called Spitting Teeth, who they are very heavy. Joel is like a brick shithouse of a person. He's covered in tattoos, but he's an absolute gentleman. And he dropped this one thing where he's like looking directly into the camera, and I was like, oh my god.
He might just reach out and hit me.
Yeah, he's a brilliantly intense person, and I didn't know the band before I sat down, and I was like, oh, this is really fucking cool. So yeah, I love being proved wrong on a band. And just in terms of who there is that I still want to shoot, there's like Sepultura, who they're touring for the last time this year.
Right.
With the possibility that's the last show they'll ever play. I'm like, oh, I need to see that. God, I mean, in terms of like ones where I'm like, oh my god, I got that. One of the first gigs I ever went to on my own was in Sheffield at Corporation. It was While She Sleeps.
Oh yeah, great band.
And then they do their one-off Sheffield show every year. And this year we got approved for it. They set off the fire alarm in the first song.
What?
So we all get evacuated.
God.
We get brought back in. They're like, right, you can have this song and then you can have your 3. So we get 4 in total. I'm like, I don't know how I did. Like, it was a difficult one. There was a lot of green lighting. Like, it wasn't the easiest shot I've ever taken. So me being me, just takes my camera, goes and stands in the crowd on like the second row. And Loz Taylor, like, well into the set, to be fair. It's one of my pinned posts on my Instagram, but he just gets up and just looks directly at me.
Wow.
And it's not focusing very well, but like
cool.
He just looks directly at me. And I was like, wow, that's really validating in terms of I caught that, and that's a band that I've like kind of grown up with a bit. So that was really cool. It's probably one of my favorites.
That is cool.
And my favorite band, period, is Fever 333.
Nice.
And I got this amazing, like, I hate the fact I just called it amazing off my own back. But
I was brilliant. Now, is this a download festival? Is that because I saw a couple of these?
No, I would have loved to have shot that because they're basically the reason I went to download that year. But it was the tour they did this year with Enter Shikari.
Okay.
And I just got this one really striking visual of the bassist who's called April K. And they're like throwing their head. And just the way that like their hair is just like splayed as them going across the range of motion. They're like screaming down at the bass. And just like the light hits it just right.
That's
personally.
Cool.
And I'm like, that's a fucking cool photo. Like
nice.
I got that one. I was like, that's the one.
Great, especially if it's a band that you're a massive fan of as well. Your captures.
I thought my card had corrupted at that gig as well, and so I was like terrified, like inconsolable, because I was like, this is my favorite band in the world, and I might not have any photos to show for it. And like I had to like just have a bit of a sit down and be like, right, let's just like Bluetooth every photo I've taken over to my phone, just while I know that the card is still in one piece. Because gear failure is like the most terrifying thing in the world for everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably While She Sleeps or Fever, personally. But while we're talking about it, all phone pics are valid. I got like one really good silhouette photo from Sleep Token. It's probably going to come up like ass if I show it on my phone, but I'll grab it anyway.
If it's on Instagram, I can overlay it on the.
Yeah, I'll send you them all. But yeah, like there's just this. It's this one silhouette where like he's just right in it.
Yeah.
And it's just black and purple, and just you can see the definition of the hand reaching out. I've got a thing for like people
That's
reaching
sick.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably like those three, and especially the fact that the last one came off a phone before I'd started shooting gigs. I was like, this is fucking cool. Like, and yeah, like I say, most of the time the camera in your pocket might be better than certain cameras that are around there, and you can just start at any time.
Nice. Now, I'm interested in the difference between gigs and festivals, because festivals are pretty full on in terms of the quantity of shots. You just did Leeds Festival. How was that? What are the challenges involved that you found with that festival?
Well, in terms of that one, I subbed in late on just as a reviewer, so I wasn't shooting.
Okay.
But in terms of just the general, I can kind of ad-lib this one somewhat. The size of that site, credit for them running it the way they do, because you think, Skrillex was on in 5-10 minutes over on the Chevron stage, which is it's so far away. So in terms of knowing your surroundings and knowing how long it's going to take to get somewhere, because like if you're in the pit, you've only got those 3 songs, and then like you're in the crowd, it's going to be a tougher night for you. So yeah, knowing what to do with that, timing is a big one, just in terms of, so I did Bloodstock as well, and in terms of, I did one of the bands in the morning and they had some sound issues, so they came on a bit late. And then there was another band on the Sophie stage, which is like on the complete opposite side. And so I had to run like across the entire festival and got like song 3 in the pit, and was just like bang, bang, bang. It was Unpeople, actually, which I believe they were on the Friday with yourself.
In fact, I'm wearing their shirt.
Yeah. Unpeople are so good, man.
Very, very good band.
But yeah, so Unpeople were playing at Bloodstock, and I had to like run all the way over.
Wow.
So yeah, timing, knowing where everything is, again, respecting your venue staff big time, making sure that you've got fresh card, fresh battery, because like Bloodstock, God, I filled up an entire card on that day, and depleted at least 1.5 batteries. And obviously because we have the press facilities, I just kind of had batteries on rotation, just charging, like popping one in, because I've got a 2 battery grip thing.
Nice.
So it was a matter of just like, right, constantly keep yourself topped up, make sure that you're eating, that you're drinking. It's the same as you would if you're just attending a festival. It's just the added that you've got these kind of fast and furious sets that are going to roll throughout the entire day. On the Saturday of Bloodstock, I shot 21 bands. And was just like,
hell.
I am on my ass. It's
because
rough, but
towards the
so
end,
cool.
Towards the end of the first day at Radar Festival, I only did the one day, but towards the end, I was like, I want to sit down more. I'm tired.
Oh yeah, like Radar is so good in terms of the way they book bands that both fit the like prog. Well, I don't know why prog's in air quotes, but they fit like the prog vibe. And then also there's 1 or 2 that are going to surprise you. They're going to be something completely different, because they have variety. But also it's only 12 bands in a day, which, like you said, like the sets just kind of bounce off one another. You can sit out, you can just follow it. Like it's such an underrated festival. And I think a lot of people know it because of the Sleep Token thing, but it's got so much more going for it. I'm really interested to see what they do next year.
Quick rabbit hole. What bands that I wanted to see on the other days what did you think of them? So Dirty Loops, what did you think of them?
They were very good at what they do.
There you go.
I wasn't aware of what they do before they came on stage.
Yeah. Funk, jazz, fusion, rock.
Yeah, it was jarring in terms of like, the musicianship that's involved in this is not what I thought. Like,
their bassist is fucking incredible.
They're so tight, and then obviously with it being covers as well, you're like, I know this song.
Oh yes, of course. Yes, covers.
Who else aside from Dirty Loops?
I wanted to see Humanity's Last Breath. Did they do the like yoga pose, really low guitar headbanging, swinging thing. It looks like a really tall dude that did that. They're like a super heavy fall prog band, like heavier than
So
heavy.
in terms of their like what we got, not really, but I think that's because we were there.
Right.
Like as the set went on, I think they got a bit more like animated with it.
Okay.
They were very interesting in terms of lighting, but super heavy. I really liked them
Okay.
because they were on a tour, either 22 or 23, and it was Humanity's Last Breath, Black Tongue, Cable,
I don't know.
and someone else. Um, that is just a heavy ass tour.
Sounds it.
And I didn't go to it, and I was like, oh, I bet they're really cool live. So when they got announced for Radar this year, I was like, that's gonna be fucking sick.
Nice. And there was another one I wanted to say, a Tesseract. How are they?
Mm.
Oh,
No, Tesseract are super good
okay.
at what they do. In terms of the last couple of album cycles, they've really tightened it in. They're very performative. I think visually, like the light show is just right. They've got an amazing photographer in Bridie. They're like my kryptonite. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
In terms of when I've shot Tesseract, I've always struggled. I think that's based entirely on just like circumstance. Because when I shot them on the War of Being tour at the start of this year, I met a photographer, Will Robinson, for the first time. And he was like, oh, yeah, I know you. I follow you on Instagram. You take really good stuff. And for some reason in my brain, I just went, not tonight, I don't. And I was fucking right.
Oh, dear.
For some reason, I was like, I can't get this shot of them. And I made shots work, but I wasn't like really happy with them. And then same with Radar this year, because Tesseract were deservedly so like the name of this year's Radar. They were like, hey, guys, we're putting on a festival. We've got Tesseract. That was the selling point of Radar. So there was a lot of interest from the press. So we got one song in the pit.
Wow.
And so
just
your
that.
time is like...
Oh, they
time's
cycled
been
you
chopped.
out to get everyone in.
Yeah. They had lasers during the set as well, so you couldn't stand in certain sections, which for health and safety, yep, fair enough. They're just... There's so much going on with that band theatrically that I have always struggled to shoot them.
Okay, fair.
Might just be like a shortcoming on my part, but they were very good. Like they're always very good. God, how many times have I seen them? I think it might be like the 5th time I've seen them.
Oh, wow.
And every time has been like a different set. I've got one, the bassist, his name's Eamon, and he looks like full on like Sith Lord type stuff, because I've dropped everything else to like pretty much black and white, and then these really stark like red lasers are shooting out behind him. Like he's
cool.
a fucking Death Star right now. It was a good year, like a sleeper year, because I think they got so much press off of Sleep Token, Periphery, A, B, and C that were all on last year's billing.
Yeah.
That this year had so much strength that people were like sleeping on. I am still in mourning for the fact that we unfortunately didn't get Oxymorons playing, because I absolutely love that band. They're a bunch of guys from New York. They are like the nicest bunch of people I've ever met. Shout out Jaffe.
I've liked
that
what
was
I've
basically
heard
the reason I
from them.
went to Radar this year.
Was it?
And
they
had
were
to
supposed to
cancel.
play Download Festival,
Sunday.
and then they couldn't in the end. I was looking forward to seeing them.
They were, yeah. Who did they get replaced? They got replaced by, I think, TX2?
No idea.
Third stage on the Friday. And the only blessing that came from them cancelling is I went, oh, sweet, I don't have to go now. Because they were like the only reason I was going on that Friday.
Oh, dear. So, to round this off a little bit here, what would you say is the difference between a good concert photographer and a great one?
Ooh.
What would be things you're shooting for to get to like next level? Like what's...
I think a lot of it is awareness, like both situational and self, as in being unseen in some senses, being humble, being kind, being respectful of the people who have invested time in you, who are investing time in that night. It's kind of the same things that I've been saying throughout, where there's so much that has gone into you being in that spot. Respect it. Unless they give you a reason not to, always respect it. And that might, again, be a bit hyperbolic just because I've been a fan of going to gigs for that long. But I think people I perceive as great photographers are the ones who they know how good they've got it. You can tell that they love it in terms of the type of work they produce as well. You can tell by how long someone's been there in a lot of cases. Again, shout out Tim Finch, because he's been at Bloodstock for a minute and he's been taking killer photos for a very long time for Razor's Edge. Cream rises to the top kind of thing. I think you will know by the people that you see more often. And even if you don't gel with a person personality-wise, just acknowledge that they're doing good work. Because at the end of the day, it's not all about what one person can make it. Because rising tide raises all boats. I think it's acknowledging that we're all in the same one. So, yeah, I think great people tend to make great photographers, is my opinion of it. Because
I love
that. You've got to be happy while you're doing it. I might sound like a bit of a stuck record, but I would much rather be like an inch out of place on a shot and have had a good night. It's kind of just all it's about. I think at the end of the day, you're still there to enjoy yourself. So,
and what you're saying about the tides raising all boats and the rest, the lack of competitiveness ought to be there because every photographer is going to take a different photo because there's a uniqueness to that. There's a creativity that everyone's going to be slightly different, angles will be different, etc. So, even just there's room for a bunch of different photographers to take a bunch of different photos during a night and still have their own place for the particular shots they got be valid and worthwhile. It's not like the loudest voice is gonna win necessarily. And what I've loved about what you said earlier on in this conversation, really at the start, was that you started out doing this to capture your own memory and experience of the gig and what you're enjoying. And what you're now doing essentially is that at scale. You're doing that for more people to connect to. Your photos as a way to remember the gigs that they went to and their artists to remember what it was like maybe to be in that venue at that time. And I could relate to that in terms of what I'm doing. I started out, just putting on a camera and listening to some music and reacting to it and reviewing it and analyzing it from my own point of view. But it's to scale online. And if you still enjoy that essence of the main thing and why you're doing it, everything else you can appreciate for just the sweeter joys of, I'm now talking to you on a podcast because of the threads that both of us follow.
Well, I believe I said it after Radar. Shout out to your platform, because I said it to Christina after we met you at Radar, and I think I did say it to you when we DM'd a bit afterwards. It's I didn't realize how much what you are doing is my perfect niche of what I love about doing this. Is just an authentic reaction of just oh yeah, this is cool. Let's just sit and listen to music together. Because I think one thing that TikTok and that does is we have such short attention spans that you need to see someone within that first 5 seconds losing their mind about how good they think a song is, or, oh, this song sucks. And I'm like, no, just sit, listen to the song, take it in, have a drink, which have a Bailey's.
Yes.
I think there's so much that can be gained in terms of just taking 5 minutes and just enjoying a moment with music. And just the different ways that you can do it, like you say, in terms of there always being a place for your photos to go. Yeah, your page, they are yours. You have ownership of them. That's something that I don't think gets acknowledged enough. In terms of crediting your photographers, you have the rights to those photos unless you've signed anything that says otherwise. In terms of your content, in terms of how you want to produce it, you can do whatever you want with it, provided you're not being a dick.
The golden rule of the internet: don't be a dick.
100%. Because again, it comes down to, would you want that photo of you out there? Would you, I don't know, want someone talking shit about your music if it's unwarranted? One thing I've always liked about your platform is just saying, it's not for me, but I can see everything that they're doing in that.
Yes.
And it's acknowledging, God, there's some talent on show. Maybe it's just not my thing.
Totally. That's my worst rating is not for me. Doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
It's like it's just not my taste. It's absolutely fine.
Honestly, it's one of the things I've done a lot of album reviews and come to the end of being like, some people might not like it, but at the end of the day, they made an album. You didn't.
Good point.
We are blessed to be in front of a lot of really talented people that make music and play music, and it's hard to be mad at an industry when it's like that.
Well, I love that sentiment, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I could talk more, but I think my room's getting a little bit too warm at this stage. And you've shared some amazing insights. It's been really fascinating and interesting. So thank you for that. I'm sure people that are tuning in will have learned some bits and pieces from your experience. Thank you very much for your time, Nic. I will be sending people your way, and hopefully more people consider taking up a camera, going to some gigs.
Oh, absolutely. Just start. And yeah, if you ever want to just sit and like chat for the sake of like like just talking about anything to do with music, gigs, whatever, just like give me a shout.
Very kind. Cheers, man. Thank you very much indeed. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Thank you again to Nic Howells for the time there. I'll put a link to his Instagram page in the description of this very episode, so you can go check out his work. If you're interested in hearing more of these episodes in future, let me know in the comments. And of course, do subscribe if you want to see my next episode and get alerted for when that happens. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you'll enjoy the next one soon.